There was a time when a house was not built to be replaced. It was expected to remain. A brick home on an old American street could stand through storms, changing owners, and generations of families passing through its rooms. The walls were not just decoration. They carried weight. They resisted fire. They aged slowly. And with basic maintenance, they could outlive the people who built them. You can still see them today. Old red brick row houses with worn stone steps, pre-war homes with thick masonry walls, schools, churches, factories, and civic buildings that feel more permanent than many houses built last year. They were not perfect. Brick was expensive. It took skilled masons, mortar, scaffolding, time, and patience. But those buildings had one quality modern housing has quietly moved away from. They were built as if the future mattered. Then the American house changed. The walls became lighter, the materials became thinner, the timelines became shorter, the builders moved faster, and the brick house, once a symbol of permanence, slowly became something else. A look, a surface, a thin layer on the outside of a house that only pretends to be what brick once was. So what killed the brick house? The answer is not that brick stopped working. The answer is that modern America stopped building homes for the same purpose. Before the Second World War, brick was still part of American building. In cities, it was durable, fire-resistant, and useful where homes stood close together. In industrial towns, factories, warehouses, schools, and workers' homes were often built from the same tough material. Brick meant stability. A brick house looked rooted. It looked like it belonged to the street, and the street looked like it might still be there 100 years later. But brick had one major problem in the world that was coming. It was slow. And after the war, America did not want slow. Millions of soldiers came home. Families formed quickly. Babies arrived. People wanted yards, garages, and space outside crowded cities. The country needed houses at a speed it had never needed before. That demand changed everything. The old way of building, where skilled trades moved carefully from house to house, could not keep up. A true brick home required masonry work, drying time, and skilled labor that could not simply be multiplied overnight. But the new suburbs were designed around speed. Developers like William Levitt understood that a house could be treated less like a handcrafted building and more like a product moving down an assembly line. One crew poured foundations, another framed walls, another installed roofs, another handled wiring, plumbing, painting, and finishing. Floor plans could be repeated, materials could be standardized, costs could be controlled. Entire neighborhoods could appear with a speed older builders could barely imagine. For families who needed homes, this was also a miracle. The post-war suburb gave millions of Americans access to homeownership, private space, and a version of middle-class life that had once felt out of reach. But something important was lost. Because when a house becomes a product, the question changes. The old question was, how do we build this to last? The new question became, how do we build this quickly enough, cheaply enough, and consistently enough to sell at scale? That change did not destroy brick overnight, but it weakened the world brick depended on. A true brick house needed masons. It needed time. It needed buyers willing to pay for durability they might not fully appreciate on the day they moved in. Mass housing rewarded something else: fast framing, lightweight walls, standard parts, lower labor costs, shorter construction schedules. Wood framing became the backbone of the modern American house. It was faster, easier to wire, easier to insulate, easier to modify, and cheaper to assemble across huge subdivisions. Brick did not disappear immediately. It was demoted. Instead of being the wall, it became the skin. Many people look at a newer home with brick on the front and assume it is a brick house. But often, it is not. It is a wood-framed house with brick veneer. Brick veneer can be attractive and protective when installed correctly, but it is not the same thing as an old structural brick wall. The old wall carried the building. The new brick face usually hangs outside the structure. Behind it is sheathing, framing, insulation, drainage space, and the real wall system doing most of the work. The brick is no longer the bones of the house. It is the jacket. And once brick became a jacket, it had to compete with every other jacket. Vinyl siding, fiber cement, synthetic stone, stucco systems, engineered panels. Brick was now just one exterior finish among many, and it was not the cheapest, fastest, or easiest. Vinyl offered builders something brick could not offer: speed. It was light. It installed quickly. It did not require masons. It came in predictable colors. It did not need painting like older wood siding. It could cover huge developments with a clean, uniform look. To buyers, it was sold as low maintenance. To builders, it was low friction. And in modern housing, low friction wins. The problem is that houses are not ordinary products. When you buy a cheap phone, you expect to replace it. When you buy a cheap appliance, you understand it may not last forever. But when a house is built cheaper, faster, and more disposable, the consequences last for decades. A house is where people spend most of their money. It is where families raise children. It is often the largest investment they will ever make. And yet, much of modern construction has quietly adopted the logic of replacement. Thin exterior materials can crack, fade, warp, leak, or age badly. Water intrusion can become a major problem if flashing, drainage, windows, or siding details are rushed or poorly installed. The house may look finished on closing day. But the real test of a home is not closing day. It is year 15, year 30, year 70. That is where older brick homes often reveal their advantage. Brick may weather, mortar may need repointing, walls may need repair. But the basic fabric of the building can remain strong for a very long time. Modern siding often does not age like that. It can look tired rather than historic, thin rather than settled, temporary rather than permanent. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Did modern housing really become cheaper? Or did we simply move the cost into the future? After the mid-century building boom, America separated appearance from substance. A house could look traditional without being built traditionally. It could have brick only on the front because that was the side buyers saw. It could have decorative shutters that did not shut, stone that was not structural stone, columns that carried no real weight. The language of permanence remained, but the permanence itself was reduced. That is why some modern suburbs feel strangely theatrical: brick without masonry mass, shutters without storms, facades without the construction depth that made those facades meaningful. Brick did not lose because people hated it. Brick lost because the system around housing changed. Developers wanted speed. Buyers wanted more square footage for the monthly payment. Manufacturers offered cheaper exterior systems. And skilled masonry became less central to ordinary home building. Meanwhile, buyers walking through model homes noticed the kitchen island, the bathroom, the open floor plan, the fresh paint, and the square footage. What they usually cannot see is the flashing behind the siding, the drainage behind the veneer, the thickness of the sheathing, or whether the walls will still be dry and stable decades later. The most important parts of a home are often invisible. The brick house represented the opposite idea. The surface was the substance. The wall you saw was part of the wall doing the work. The issue is whether we are building for endurance or turnover. Modern technology could build incredible homes if durability were the priority. But too often, the market does not ask for the longest-lasting house. It asks for the largest house at the acceptable price, the fastest build, the cleanest listing photos, the most attractive monthly payment. And that is how a culture forgets how to build for the century ahead. The brick house was not killed by one invention. It was not killed by vinyl alone. It was not killed by Levittown alone. It was killed by a new economic logic that valued speed, size, and surface over mass, skill, and time. Maybe that is the real reason brick faded. Not because it failed, but because it lasted too long. A house that can stand for 200 years is wonderful for the family living inside it. But it is not always wonderful for an industry built around replacement, renovation, and resale. The brick house did not disappear because people stopped needing shelter. It disappeared because the market discovered that a house could look permanent without being permanent. And for a while, that was enough. But every shortcut eventually sends a bill. Sometimes to the first owner, sometimes to the second, sometimes to the next generation. And maybe the question is not whether we can afford to build homes that last. Maybe the question is whether we can afford to keep building homes that do not.